2 spoons of borax, one $5 box on the laundry shelf. 8 problems handled in this family for over 50 years. Ant colonies under the patio, slugs at the hostas, cabbages that stopped heading, powdery mildew on the squash, driveway weeds, cockroaches behind the stove, fleas under the porch. Number 1 wipes out an entire ant colony in 2 weeks. A bonus recipe from a smokehouse door, pinned in 1926, handles the worm in the apple. The garden center stopped recommending any of this in 1988. One quick note before the countdown: the $5 box on the laundry shelf is not registered as a pesticide. Using it for pest control is what gardeners have been doing for 100 years anyway. Keep it away from the dog. Keep it out of reach of children. Do not pour it on garden soil. 3 rules. We will come back to them. We start at 8. Number 8 on the list of things 2 spoons of borax does, and the lesson my mother took me out to the backyard plot for the same summer she taught me the ant trick in the kitchen. The brassica bed, cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. Every American gardener who has grown brassicas for more than 5 seasons has run into the same problem. The plants look fine all spring, healthy green leaves, strong stems. Then at the moment the head should form, nothing forms. The cabbage stays loose and refuses to tighten. The cauliflower curd turns brown in the middle. The broccoli stem develops a hollow channel running down the center. That is boron deficiency. Boron is a micronutrient, meaning plants need almost none of it, but the almost none they need has to be there in the soil, in a form the roots can pull up. Most American garden soils east of the Mississippi develop boron deficiency over years of vegetable gardening, particularly in raised beds where the topsoil was brought in clean. The treatment my mother used, and the one I have used since the late 70s, is 1/4 teaspoon of household borax dissolved in a full watering can of warm water. Applied once at the beginning of the growing season to the brassica bed only, with the can poured at the base of the plants rather than over the foliage. That is the dose: 1/4 teaspoon, 1 can of water, 1 application per season. The cabbage's head, the cauliflower curds stay white. The broccoli stems are solid the whole way down. The garden center sells boron supplements for the same problem at $12 to $20 per small bag. The same chemistry is in the $5 box on the laundry shelf. The math my mother knew without ever needing to write it down. The brassicas remember what to do. Number 7, the slug barrier my mother drew around her hosta bed every spring. Slugs and snails are the slow plague of every shaded American garden. They come out at night, and they chew holes through every soft leaf they can find. By July, the hostas look like lace doilies. The traditional commercial slug bait, metaldehyde pellets, costs $8 to $15 per container and has to be reapplied every 2 weeks. The pellets are also acutely toxic to dogs that eat them. My mother used dry borax instead. A thin line, about 1/8 of an inch wide, is drawn around the outside edge of every hosta bed and every shade planting at the start of slug season in April. The line goes on top of the mulch, not in the soil. Slugs and snails cannot cross the dry borax barrier without picking up the chemistry on their soft underbody. The dehydration kills them slowly enough that they crawl back to where they came from, and the survival rate of the colony drops dramatically over the first few weeks. The mistake gardeners make with this method is putting the line too close to the plants or applying too much. The barrier goes at the perimeter of the bed, not under the plants themselves. And the line itself is thin, a pinch from the box at a time, not a thick band. Reapply after every heavy rain. The chemistry washes off concrete the same way it washes off mulch. In a wet spring, you may need to redraw the line 3 or 4 times. In a dry summer, you may not need to redraw it at all. 1 pound of borax draws the perimeter line around 6 average hosta beds for an entire summer. The math comes out to about 30 cents per bed per year. Metaldehyde pellets for the same protection run $40 per bed per year. My mother could do the math too. Number 6, the flea treatment that protected the dog without putting chemistry on the dog. Fleas do not live on the lawn in summer. They live in the shade, under porches, beneath thick shrubs, along the foundation on the north side of the house, anywhere the soil stays cool and moist, and a flea larva can develop undisturbed. By the time a flea jumps onto the dog, it has already spent 3 weeks in one of those shaded spots. My mother mixed 1 part borax to 3 parts dry sand in a bucket every June. She broadcast the mixture by hand across every shaded patch in the yard, under the front porch steps, along the foundation on the cool side, beneath the rhododendrons by the kitchen window. The sand carried the borax into the soil cracks where the flea larvae developed. The chemistry dehydrated the larvae before they reached adult stage. The treatment broke the flea life cycle at the source, outside the house, before the fleas reached the dog or the carpet. 2 practical rules. First, the treatment goes down on a dry day with no rain in the 72-hour forecast. Rain washes the borax out of the sand before the chemistry has a chance to work. Second, the timing matters. A flea life cycle runs 4 to 6 weeks. The first application in mid-June handles the spring brood. A second application in mid-August handles the late summer brood. After that, fall cool temperatures shut down the population on their own. A bag of contractor sand and a 1-pound carton of borax, total cost about $3, treats an entire suburban yard for 1 season. Commercial yard flea sprays run $16 to $20 per bottle, with multiple bottles needed and reapplication every 30 days. My mother knew the dog, and the budget were both better off with a sand bucket. Number 5. The leaf treatment my mother reached for in late July, when the squash vines started fading under the gray dust. A short note before the recipe. This one is not in any extension manual I have ever read. It is a folk recipe my mother learned from a neighbor in the late 1960s and used every summer until she stopped gardening. The extension agents will tell you to use potassium bicarbonate, milk, and water spray at 1 to 10 or sulfur dust. Those work. So does what follows, at least in my yard, on my squash. The 4 summers I have tested it against an untreated control row. Run it on 1 leaf first before the whole bed and watch for 48 hours. Powdery mildew is the white-gray fungus that creeps across squash, cucumber, zucchini, and zinnia leaves at the hottest part of summer. The leaves look like someone dusted them with chalk. Within a week, the affected leaves turn yellow, brown, and drop. Within 2 weeks, the plant has lost enough leaf area that fruit production stops. Most gardeners pull the vines in early August, thinking the season is done. The recipe is 1 teaspoon of household borax, 1 tablespoon of cooking oil, 1 gallon of water. Shake the jug hard until the oil emulsifies into the water. Spray the mix on the tops and undersides of affected leaves in the early morning before the sun hits the bed. The oil makes the solution cling to the leaf instead of running off. The borax shifts the leaf surface chemistry against the fungus. 3 applications, 4 days apart. By the second spray, the gray dust is fading. By the third, the new leaves coming in are clean. Squash vines I was ready to pull out in early August stayed productive through the first frost. The cucumber bed put out a second flush of fruit by Labor Day. A bottle of commercial fungicide at the garden center runs $10 to $15 and treats 1 bed. The household borax and the cooking oil from the pantry, both already paid for, treat the same bed for less than a quarter. The folk recipe my mother never forgot. Number 4, the cracks in the concrete that stop sprouting weeds after my mother taught me the recipe. Every American driveway, every brick walkway, every patio joint develops weeds, crabgrass, dandelion, plantain. The weeds find soil in the cracks. The cracks widen as the roots push the concrete apart. And within a few years, the homeowner is replacing a section of driveway that the weeds undermined. My mother's recipe, 1 heaping tablespoon of borax dissolved in 1 quart of hot water. Pour the solution directly into the crack over the weed and into the soil pocket the weed is growing in. Within a week, the weed browns and dies. The chemistry also suppresses new germination in the same crack for the rest of the growing season. 1 quart of solution treats roughly 20 feet of driveway cracks. The cost is pennies. Commercial driveway weed killers run $12 to $18 per bottle and require multiple applications across the season. My mother's pot of hot water did the same work for the price of 2 minutes on the stove. But there is one place this recipe never goes. Never on garden soil, never on a lawn, never within 10 feet of a flower bed that might catch the runoff. The boron in the solution does not break down. It stays in whatever soil it lands on, and within a season or two, that soil stops growing anything at all. The driveway crack is fine. The garden bed is destroyed. My mother drew a line that I drew after her. The chemistry crosses the property line of the concrete, not the soil. 20 feet of driveway, 1 tablespoon, 1 quart of water, 1 application per season, 40 years of weed-free joints, 5 of the 8 so far, and 3 more to come. Before the final 3, 2 pages from the kitchen table. The 3 rules my mother absolutely refused to break with the box in 40 years. And the bonus recipe from a neighbor's smokehouse door dated 1926, the one for the worm in the apple. Drop your state in the comments and tell me one thing you have been buying for the yard that you suspect a $5 box could replace. The pattern in those comments tells me which uses need their own follow-up video. If a video like this, one that names the chemistry behind the bottles the garden center has been selling for decades, is the kind of practical gardening you wish more channels covered, the like button helps the algorithm put it in front of more gardeners who have been overpaying. The subscribe button is right below for more of these heritage recipes when they drop. Now to the 3 rules. 3 rules I have followed for 40 years on the same property. The same 3 my mother followed before me. First, the box stays up high, always. Top shelf of the laundry cabinet, never on the floor, never within reach of a curious dog or a crawling child. Boric acid is toxic enough to make a 40-pound dog seriously sick after about 2 teaspoons of ingestion, resulting in vomiting, diarrhea, and a vet bill in the hundreds. The lethal dose runs much higher than that, but the sickening dose is 2 teaspoons. Second, the borax never goes on the garden soil, never tilled in, never mixed into compost, never broadcast over a bed. Boron does not break down, it accumulates. The same $5 box that feeds the cabbage at a 1/4 teaspoon per watering can also sterilizes the bed at a tablespoon per square foot. Borax is medicine in spoonfuls and trouble by the cupful. Third, never during bee activity. The ant bait stations went down before 7 in the morning, before the bees were on the flowers. Never within 10 feet of an open bloom. Bees pick up boric acid residue on their fuzzy bodies, and the chemistry is not friendly to them. 3 rules, 40 years on the same property, and they have not changed. One more from the kitchen table before the final 3. This one I owe to a neighbor named Ruth, who lived 3 farms over from my grandmother and outlived most of our family by 20 years. Ruth sat with me on the back porch the September after my mother passed and opened a small tin she had carried in her coat pocket. Inside was a folded square of brown paper from her own grandmother's smokehouse door, a recipe pinned to that door in 1926. A note before the method, because I owe you honesty. This is a folk practice. You will not find it in any modern extension manual. The USDA supported treatments for codling moth from the early 1900s onward were lead arsenate sprays, then organophosphates, then the codling moth-specific products at the garden center today. What follows is what one family of Pennsylvania orchard keepers wrote down for each other on the back of a smokehouse door, and what I have used on my own 4 apple trees for 19 years. coddling moth, the worm in the apple, the reason your homegrown apples have a brown tunnel running to the core when you cut them open in October. In late winter, late February in the south, late March up north, before the apple buds break, mix 1 part borax to 2 parts warm water into a thick paste about the consistency of cream. Take a wide paintbrush and paint a band of the paste around the trunk of each apple tree, starting about 1 foot off the ground and going up to about 3 feet. 1 painting, 1 tree per year. The coddling moth larvae overwinter in the bark crevices of the trunk. When they wake up and crawl toward the new buds in spring, they have to cross the band. Borax does to them what it does to a slug or a flea. It causes desiccation and dehydration, the end of the larva before it reaches a leaf. My own results across 19 years on 4 trees. Last fall, I cut into 40 apples to check, 38 clean to the core, 2 with a single worm tunnel each. The catalog cannot sell you that outcome for the price of a paintbrush. The recipe from the smokehouse door, the folk page Ruth carried in her coat pocket for 40 years. Now back to the countdown, the final 3. Number 3, the household pest control. My mother set up the first week we moved into the Pennsylvania house in 1968. This one is not for the garden. It is for the part of the home most American gardeners spend the rest of their day in. Cockroaches in the kitchen, silverfish in the bathroom. Indoor pest control, where the dry borax does identical work to the $40 professional bait kit. The recipe is 2 parts powdered sugar to 1 part borax mixed together in a glass jar. Dust the mixture into cracks along baseboards, behind the stove, under the refrigerator, along the joint where the cabinet meets the wall. The cockroaches and silverfish pick up the sweet bait readily, return to wherever they nest, and the colony collapses over several weeks. Dry borax in the right cracks stays effective for months. A box of sugar and a box of borax, total cost about $6, treats an average American kitchen and bathroom for 2 full years. Commercial roach baits run $25 to $40 per kit and need replacement every 6 months. This is the use most American grandmothers between 1940 and 1960 knew without ever reading it in a book. The chemistry is the same one in the garden center bait stations sold today for 10 times the per ounce price. The $5 laundry shelf box does identical work in the kitchen baseboards. My mother kept the kitchen clean. She also kept $5 in her pocket every year that the exterminator never got. Number 2, the connection between the ants on the patio and the aphids on the roses that nobody at the garden center has ever explained to a customer who came in with one or the other. Aphids do not move themselves, not far, not fast, not on purpose. The reason the same rosebush gets aphid colonies year after year is not that the aphids decided to come back. It is that the ants brought them. Ants run aphid colonies the way a dairy farmer runs his herd. The ants carry aphids from plant to plant. When the leaves on the current host get tired, they drive off the ladybugs and lacewings that would otherwise eat the aphids down to nothing. They harvest the honeydew the aphids produce as waste, and the colony feeds well. Kill every aphid on the rosebush today, and the ants walk a fresh herd in from the neighbor's yard by Thursday. My mother understood this in 1968 without anyone explaining the biology to her. She watched the trail of ants run up the rose stem. She watched the aphids appear above the trail. She watched the ladybugs vanish from the bush, and she connected the dots. The treatment is not on the rose. The treatment is at the ant trail. We get to it at number 1. When the ant colony collapses, the aphid population loses its protection. The ladybugs and lacewings that were waiting in your yard the whole time move back onto the rosebush and clear the aphids within a week. No spray, no glove, no sticky soap on the foliage. The garden takes care of itself once the dairy operation is shut down. This is the use the garden center never sold borax for, because the garden center sells aphid sprays for $12 a bottle. The connection my mother drew with her finger from the ant trail to the aphid colony was the connection that ended 30 years of aphid sprays in our family yard. Number 1. The recipe in the glass jar on my kitchen windowsill that my mother first wrote out in pencil on the back of a flour sack envelope in 1968. 2 spoons of borax, 6 spoons of sugar, 1 pint of warm water, 2 drops of dish soap to break the surface tension, stir until dissolved, soak 6 cotton balls in the solution. Place each cotton ball in a small jar lid. Set the jar lids along the ant trail at the foundation of the house, the base of the patio, the edge of the vegetable bed where the ants are running. Cover each station with a small flat rock to keep rain off and pets away. That is the entire recipe. The University of Hawaii published a research protocol on sugar borax ant bait some years back that confirmed what every American grandmother already knew. The borax has to be at about 5% of the total solution by weight. Stronger than that, and the worker ant dies before it carries the bait back to the colony. The queen survives. The colony rebuilds inside 2 weeks. Weaker than that, and the bait works too slowly to wipe the colony out before the next brood matures. 2 spoons of borax to 6 spoons of sugar in a pint of water hits the 5% mark almost exactly. The math my mother arrived at by trial and error in 1968 is the math the laboratory protocol confirmed 4 decades later. The ant trail goes quiet by day 5. The colony is fully collapsed by day 14. The aphids on the rosebush, the ones the ants had been farming, start dropping off within a week as the ladybugs move in. The patio stays clear for the rest of the season. 2 spoons of borax, 6 spoons of sugar. The trick the garden center stopped recommending sometime around 1988 when the brands changed hands and the advertising stopped, and the laundry shelf box quietly waited on the bottom shelf for the gardeners who still knew what to do with it. That is number 1, the recipe in the jar, the trick they tried to bury. That is the 8 uses my mother kept in the glass jar on the windowsill, plus the bonus from the smokehouse door, plus the 3 rules she would not break. Buy the $5 box from the laundry aisle. Mix the ant bait at 2 spoons to 6 spoons of sugar in a pint of warm water. A 1/4 teaspoon to the brassica bed in spring. Make a slug line at the hosta perimeter in April. Powdery mildew spray on the squash before sunrise. Paint the apple trunks in late winter. The cupboard before the catalog. The recipe in the jar.